we're going to go ahead and move on to the next portion of our agenda. I want to go ahead and give a chance for Gracie, Graciela Camarena, and Frank Morales to introduce yourselves, please. We are very excited to have both of you here, and we have some questions that we've developed that are about best practices when you're working with a family who has fears around public charge.
Okay, well, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. I do want to mention, I know when we started the webinar, Esther mentioned and introduced us as the
Oh man, I think she fell off, right?
We sure did. We lost her.
Lost her.
She may have to be off camera. Sometimes that when you're on camera and your internet's wonky. Let's see if she gets back on.
Okay. Frank, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Frank Morales. I'm with Central Med. We're a federally qualified health center, focused primarily in the greater San Antonio area, though we also have a presence in Comal County. And of course, we service any of the surrounding counties to the greater San Antonio area. We've got upwards of 20 some odd clinics in San Antonio and 2 clinics up in Comal County. Personally, I've been associated with this program for the last 8 years. So I wasn't here for year 1, but have been on almost exclusively since then. I've been a certified application counselor. I'm a CPP navigator, and now also a federal navigator. You know, based on our grant that we're working on this particular year. And I've had lots of exposure to questions and concerns about public charge. One of the things that we did here in San Antonio was we, along with the city of San Antonio and the Rio Grande Legal Aid Association, we went ahead and held a series of workshops that included local immigration attorneys. And of course, we were able to in those workshops is address, get the information, from the attorneys on the immigration law, but at the same time, provide our expertise as to how, which of those benefits and how how they are in Texas are presented, not, the way they're presented, the way they're directed, they are for the citizen or the resident person, not the one that's still pending LPR status. And we're able to provide that information to alleviate some of the concerns and questions there. Can't think of anything else. Another thing that we're able to address, and it's we've been able to work with, is trying to alleviate some of the concerns that were generated by well-intentioned folks that tended to amalgamate different issues and make their own interpretations. As most of us know, any of the proposed immigration reform legislations that have been put out there have all addressed, some sort of a reckoning for prior taxes, particularly income taxes, and paying back for any income taxes that may have been due. And that's been misinterpreted to, on the public charge side to say, well, if you have to go back and pay for income taxes, then shouldn't you have to pay back for any benefits you may have received? And 2 reasons that's not a factor here in Texas is, one, you are not going to receive any benefits if you're undocumented in Texas. That's just it's not available to you. And the second is that, like was previously stated, those benefits are primarily, the medical benefits and the food benefits and so on. And again, even if they're coming to family members, they're exempt from public charge. So.
Thank you, Frank. And we will definitely dive a little bit deeper into that with the questions that'll be coming up. Gracie, I'm sorry, I inadvertently made you an attendee. I'm so sorry. So you're back. That was my fault. Thank you.
Not a problem, Esther. As I was saying again, I know early on in the introduction, when we started the webinar, you mentioned that they'd be hearing from STAR enrollment assisters. Well, I just want to acknowledge that the STAR assisters are all the attendees because they are every day, doing the work in the community. I've been there, done that, but you're there right now. And I want to acknowledge that as well. Again, my name is Graciela Camarena. I am currently the Outreach Program Director with the Children's Defense Fund, Texas. I'm located in the Rio Grande Valley. We have an office in McAllen, but of course our work is outreach. We've been working from home, and actually we've been working from our cars, from the libraries, from the Health and Human Services offices, from wherever we can meet families. So again, that's who we are and what we do. Just a little bit of my experience. I've been doing this type of work most of my life, but professionally, I would say right around 25 years experience doing direct outreach, enrollment, advocacy, and just assisting families in our communities, including even work that I did as a migrant farm worker up in the state of Michigan. So again, I feel that our experiences make us who we are, and that's why we're here. We have the passion and the love to connect families to information that they need, deserve, and also that otherwise may not get to them. So I know that working with families face to face has always been, essential. And throughout this pandemic, that has hindered our face-to-face efforts, but it hasn't taken it away. We find ways to still reach families. If it was through Zoom, it was through phone calls, through chats, through Messenger, through however way we can reach families, we have continued to do that. And we're hoping that very soon, as we're out in our communities again, we'll be able to again meet with families in larger groups, at school settings, in churches, as we are already doing, and of course in community centers, and wherever we can. It's just a pleasure to be here, and thank you. So I'm ready to share experiences, but I'm also ready to hear experiences from other assisters as well.
Thank you so much, Gracie and Frank. So the first question that I have for y'all is, what are some of the common sources of misinformation that you have encountered in your work?
If you don't mind, I can go first with that. Throughout this time, and I know Ms. Gabrielle mentioned, this isn't new. We've been doing this work for many, many years. And a lot of the misinformation usually comes from sources we're supposed to trust and hear from, which are some of the news headlines and news feeds that we hear. Sometimes just that initial comment, if it's on the television, even if the words or the terms public charge are included, literally sometimes the information is twisted. It doesn't apply to everyone. But of course, because it's a headline, because it's in the news, and we're supposed to trust that, some of that misinformation is spread widely through those news feeds. Again, there are many that are true, and they get to us when there's a source that is real, but definitely where I have seen some real damage done has been through some news headlines that have just instilled so much fear and misinformation into our communities, into our state, and into our country, literally regarding issues around public charge. And if I may add, another source of misinformation, and I think also it was touched briefly, I think by Frank in his introduction as well, is just instilling fear through Border Patrol or other officials, saying you would have to pay back benefits, or even just identifying, for instance, I know there was some instances in my work and talking to families where they have told us, that they do have a crossing card, or some of them are already permanent residents, so they don't even have to deal with public charge. But as they would go and come in and out of the country to visit family or just to go get, some needed supplies or tortillas or whatever from Mexico, just across the border here from McAllen, many of the officials or agents, if they saw for any reason, they were looking through their bag as an inspection, or maybe it was visible that they had a WIC card or a SNAP card, they were giving like ugly faces or saying, you're not supposed to have that, you're gonna have to pay that back. So there is a lot of things that these officials that had no right to be telling them, because they weren't even, in a processing mode or anything regarding public charge, regarding entrance into the country for the first time. These are people already legal permanent residents that were just doing their daily visits to Mexico, like I said, to visit family or to buy needed supplies, that are being stared down, told that they didn't deserve that or shouldn't be applying for that. And so families were concerned and feared, and many of them stopped getting these benefits and services that they needed, that they deserved and qualified for. So again, these are some of the sources of misinformation that I have experienced throughout my work that are still out there today. So again, very important to know what does affect someone who is applying for permanent residency or an adjustment of status for the first time, and what doesn't. And especially those who already have a permanent resident status, they don't even have to worry about this. But again, that's not understood because of all the negative misinformation that's out there.
Thank you,
Frank?
Gracie. Frank, is there something you would like to add?
Yeah. Apparently I got a little carried away in my introduction and started on this particular set of questions. So I have mentioned a lot on our attorneys and the acquaintances and so on. I would like to add that I want to echo Gracie in that the issue for LPRs often comes up, and the idea that, that the public charge issue is going to be something that's going to affect their citizenship, which obviously it's not. And that's a hard one to get across to folks and say, when it comes to your citizenship, you have other things that you need to be concerned about. Your period of residency, that can be abbreviated to military service, which you can now do as an LPR, and other factors. There's some fees, there's the exam, but public charge is no longer part of that. So that's one of the things. And then the other thing that Gracie, what you mentioned about the well-meaning, some of the other sources that are out there. Having been a green card holder myself from Central America, I can't tell you how difficult it is to trust that there's a separation between government agencies when you come, from a country where the government is so corrupt, that if someone tells you, hey, the folks that are doing public benefits or the folks that are doing these other things, they're not going to share your information, with the folks that are going to deport you. It's very, very difficult to believe, coming from Central American countries where corruption is so rife, the idea that stuff isn't shared and that you don't have to bribe somebody to keep it from being shared is hard to accept. So it's just a little add on there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we do already have a question from Jennifer, and that's actually one of the questions that we're going to be asking in just a minute. So hang tight. Along with these common sources of misinformation, we know that there are very common myths or misunderstandings about public charge. And Frank, you briefly talked about one of those being that that benefits that family members receive, they're going to be having to pay back. And so do you want to add a little bit more about that myth and what the truth is, what the reality is there?
Yes, again, going back to the way I see it, the way, some of that, and there is some logic to it. Some logic that if any of the immigration reform, all of the immigration reform legislations that have been put together, whether it be bipartisan or whether it be from one party or the other, all of them have an element of kind of addressing, any unpaid taxes. And for some reason that all gets kind of jumbled up in people's minds. And if they think, well, if I've got to go back and pay for unpaid taxes, which the other thing that's kind of curious about that is that most of the folks that are affected by the immigration reform legislation has been put out there are not going to have to pay back any income taxes. Those are folks that most of these folks generally fall in incomes where income tax isn't going to apply. But that's, again, it's been part of the law, just for part of the draft legislation. And it gets out there and folks think, well, if I've got to pay back my income taxes, then I'm going to have to pay back for benefits, and not just benefits that I've received, because obviously if I'm undocumented, not receiving benefits, but benefits my children may have received or my spouse may have received. And that's something we're always addressing, the same folks that that's not the case. So.
Thank you, Frank. Gracie, what are some of the misunderstandings and common myths that you've come across?
Thank you, Esther. Well, definitely I'd like to share that one of the myths, and we deal with this all the time because we at the Children's Defense Fund assist families to apply for CHIP and Children's Medicaid, SNAP programs, and other benefit that they may qualify for, need, and deserve. So we hear this all the time. So the myth that I hear is that applying for benefits for my family could put me at risk for deportation. So again, that fear about what will happen if they access these services. Well, the truth is that public charge and immigration enforcement are separate things. They're unrelated processes that, will not blend. So any information that you put on an application, you're the mom or the dad and you're filling out this application, let's just say for Medicaid, children's Medicaid. Of course, the adult person, the head of household, the mom or the dad's name is going to go on this application. It doesn't mean that they are applying for benefits. It's just the contact information which is needed. So again, that information is only used to determine the child's eligibility for the benefits program. It doesn't mean, again, that they're applying for any of these benefits. And the information cannot be shared with immigration enforcement. The truth is, if you are undocumented and applying for your child or another family member, you do not have to provide information about your immigration status. You just, leave it blank, skip, put a line through it. You don't have to answer that. You don't have to put a note saying, I don't have it, or I'm undocumented. You don't have to do any of that. Again, like I said, you may write, I'm not applying for myself, and that's all you have to do. So again, very important that an individual who is not applying for benefits themselves does not have to provide this information. And any information that is provided is supposed to be confidential on these state applications or federal applications. So again, they should feel at ease that this myth that they're going to find out that I'm undocumented because I filled out the application for my child. Again, that is not true. We need to make sure that families feel safe to apply for these benefits, to use these benefits for their children. And of course, right now in this day and era, respond to renewals before the public health emergency ends. That way their children stay on if they still qualify. These programs, again, if an individual does not have the citizenship status or the legal permanent status, does not have a social security number, they will not qualify for any of these programs. So literally they don't apply for these programs. So again, there are a few people that do have a working social security number for work purposes, but they don't have the other status. They won't qualify for these programs. But if you have children, this is the message that we as the sisters give to our community and the people that we serve. If you have children, your income is within the guidelines that is set by the state. There's a need for this services, apply for it. Again, this benefits are for the children, and you don't have to worry about a deportation or shared information, because that is supposed to be protected information. So that's definitely one of the myths that I hear quite frequently.
Thank you. That's that's all very helpful. We are actually out of time for this part of the agenda, but this is so good. So I'm going to give us 5 more minutes, because we'll just do, instead of a 10-minute break, we'll do a 5-minute break. Because I think, one, I want to offer all of the participants the opportunity to, in the chat, add their own experiences as well, and kind of some of those myths that they hear about. What we want to do with this training is make all of these resources available, even these talking points that we're having from panelists, have, this is a common scenario that I've had, here's the truth about it. So we want to make these available in the resource page that we're making available to you all. So please feel free to drop your own experience in the chat, because we want to hear about it as well. And then Sonia, did you want to jump in real quick before I ask the?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody, thank you, Frank, and thank you, Gracie, for all your work and sharing your experiences on this issue with everyone. I think what I want everybody that's listening in on this webinar to understand is that we feel that you have to be empowered. And so we're trying to bring your peers here in front of you to tell you, hey, we've dealt with this, and we can tell you that we are the experts on this. We know this. Right. And so we have to make sure that you guys feel confident and secure in relaying that to your families. Now, I hear some people say, well, I can't convince them. And, a lot of times I find that if the family finds any hint of doubt in you as the assister, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to convince them. So we're just, our aim in this webinar is to try and make it a little more different, so that you all could hear from your peers, hear some of these myths, hear how false they are, how Border Patrol agents are not supposed to be doing this, but it's to empower you to feel more confident. And I think the more confident you feel, you relay that to your clients, and you may be able to convince them. That's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sonia. Yes, I think that's a message that we all need to take away from this, is that at the end of the day, you are the healthcare advocates, and you are the experts in public benefits eligibility. You're the ones that do the work day in and day out, and you're the ones that are trained on this. And so that's really important for you to remember, that you are the experts on this matter. So the last question that I want to ask, and what Jennifer earlier was asking as well, are what are the most helpful strategies, best practices, best messages that you have found to impact and change your client's mind, and what has helped them to overcome that fear? Gracie, if you want to start.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind with that, of course, is just listening. Listening to where they're coming from, what are those doubts and fears that they are facing, and that it's real. It's real for them. So we should not disregard it in any way. although we may know the information or have received training, have seen the actual guidance, we don't want to just say, oh, don't worry about it, it's not going to affect you. We're going to have to say, okay, we understand where you're coming from. These are the facts. This is the information we have to share with you. And we want to make sure that we provide that in the most empathetic way possible, because either some of us have been through that situation, have a family member or friend, or just care about those family members who, or those individuals in our communities that have gone through this. So again, listening to what they're saying and have empathy, because the fear is real, just like the fear of this current tragedy is real. Even though it happened in Uvalde, we feel it in our hearts here today and across the state and across the nation. So not that I'm comparing those are very different, but people's fears and unknowns will drive them to either pull away or fight or move forward and actually do something and apply, or just give up. So again, our main thing is the strategy is to listen to where people are coming from, show that we care, and definitely provide them the right resources and information for them to make a decision on their own. So that's one of the strategies. I don't know, Frank, if you want to share others.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly address one of the questions that just popped up. There will be instances where you will not be able to convince those folks. And you just have to be prepared for that. We had one family who came to our eligibility manager and said, not only do I not want to have, my children receiving Medicaid or SNAP, but I also want you, Central Med, to expunge any information that, as far as care that I've received through Central Med, because we're a federally qualified health center. And he somehow or another was making the linkage there. And of course, under HIPAA, we were required to do that. And we went ahead and he deleted his family's medical information from our records based on his request. So there are folks who you're not going to be able to convince. One of the things that I find very helpful to convince them is the whole ITIN setup. Most people, if they've been here long enough, they know that they can get an ITIN and they can use that. I've had folks who've shown me where they've purchased homes, paid off homes, they file income taxes, whereas with a spouse who may have a Social Security number and their children. So the fact that we have, one of the what I would call one of the senior agencies in our federal government, IRS, that accepts you being able to use your ITIN to report income and to hold property, that should be, indicative that there is, that there's this whole other space where you can report and you can do things, and it's not going to affect, you're not going to be turned over to the immigration authorities. And all you have to do is, look for advertisements about, from the mortgage brokers, about how you can purchase a home or a trailer or a property with your ITIN. Unlike other countries, we do not require, someone to be a citizen or a resident, to buy property here, to own things here. And that sometimes alleviates folks' concern, because they say, well, yeah, I have an ITIN, we formed an LLC, and that's how I report my income, and that's how I qualified for a mortgage loan. And none of that gets reported back over to the immigration authorities, and people, particularly people who come from Mexico, where Hacienda, where they are IRS, is this big, powerful organization, that because of the way they collect taxes, it's everywhere. And they understand where IRS is, like Hacienda, is a powerful organization. If they can operate within that organization and not be turned over to immigration authorities, that should be indicative, of other interactions they have with benefits.
Thank you, Frank.
If you don't mind, Esther,
Absolutely.
Sonia and Frank, I just wanted to see if I could address a couple of the questions. Yes, I've had many experiences where we couldn't convince someone to go ahead and, apply, as much as even after this person adjusted their status, and we've been following them throughout the years, they still don't want to apply for anything. So, and it's okay. It's definitely up to the individual. It's going to be their decision at the end. And yes, there have been many that we just cannot convince, and that's okay as long as they make the decision. But again, we provided all the facts, all the resources that are available to them as well. And another question that I wanted to address from Brian. So, I've had this before as well. So if only, if it's a family household of 5 and only one of them is a US citizen, should they include all the members in the household on the application? Well, it depends what application you're applying for. So is this one member who's a US citizen, a child, and they're applying for benefits like children's Medicaid? In the application, there is information. So of course, the head of household or the parent provides the information for contact. And then there's sections of who's applying for benefits. So that one individual, that one child will be on the application applying for benefits. And then there's a section where it says other household members that live in the household that are not applying, because it's to the benefit of the child. For instance, depending on the income that's coming into the home, whatever that income is, if it's self-employment income or whatever type of income that usually is, they're going to count that income to see if that one child qualifies for benefits. And if only the child is the only person and not the other household members, that's going to be a family of 1 or 2 if they include the household or the parent who's actually providing the income. But if there's other siblings that are not applying because they don't have the status, it still would be a household of 5. So maybe that income would help that one child. So there is a section in that particular application where, yes, you put that there are other household members. You don't have to give more information, just maybe a date of birth, because if you're under, I believe, 19, 18 or under, right before you turn 19, and you're a child, you're still counted part of that household, but any adult children are not counted under that household. But maybe it's mom, dad, one adult child, or one adult child who's over 19, but the others are under 18 but not applying. So at least they'll count those family members that still count within that application. I hope that I was able to answer your question, Brian, but I think it's to the benefit of the child. Again, depending on the benefit or application you're applying for, but definitely it's very important that that everyone is included for that application itself.
Okay, thank you so much, Frank and Gracie. We are up even with we're out of our break time, but I think this has just been so valuable and definitely worth it. I want to share, actually, before we move on to the next portion, is I do want to share this resource page that we are compiling and that I have sent. I'm going to put the link in there one more time for you. We're going to be updating this, but this web page is going to be having resources that you can use. For example, all of these letters that are federal documentation on public charge, they come from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Health and Human Services. These are all things that you can also show the people that you're working with. Look, here's a letter that says it is safe for your children or for you or for whatever it is the case to apply for these benefits, and they really want you to know that. Here's a simple list of the benefits that are included and not included in public charge. And what's going to be coming soon is some helpful talking points, some of the things that we've developed and talked about in this webinar. We're also currently working on a video where we're going to be asking immigration attorneys some frequently asked questions, right, that come from community members and that also come from you all. And so those are going to be posted here, and you're going to be able to use those as resources. You know, sometimes they do hear one thing from an attorney, but that attorney might not be an expert in public benefits law, right? They might be an expert in immigration law, but don't know the public benefits or public charge law. And so these videos are going to be experts on that matter in particular. So you'll be able to have these here. Again, we'll send a link to this page. And I do want to thank again, Frank and Graciela for your time and sharing your expertise. I wish we could have more people, you know, continuing to ask questions, because I know we have them. But thank you so much. I'm going to do just like a 3-minute break. I think we're only going to be able to do 2 scenarios, just so I can pull up a few materials that I need to, if y'all need to stand up and take a drink of water. And I'm also going to be getting Yesenia and Maria on the screen in just a minute. So Sonia, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to stop the break, so you guys need to go. I just wanted to address a comment that was made by Maria Linares on the chat, where she said that she had an attorney advise one of her clients not to get her breast cancer benefits. And because he said all benefits would count as public charge. Obviously, that attorney doesn't know what he's talking about. And I wanted to bring up that CentroMed, Frank, actually had a coworker, Linda, who's no longer at the health center, but she actually had a client very similar, came in and said the same thing. My immigration attorney told me not to apply. And what she did is she actually called the attorney and talked to the attorney and did some education with that attorney. And so, I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't do that ourselves. Again, we're the experts. We want you all to feel that you all are confident, like Erlinda, and you call the attorney and say, you're wrong. Basically, it's because they don't know the public charge rule. And so they don't know that. And I just want to throw that out there, because I feel like, again, we just don't sit there and take it. We fight back with information.